Hello and welcome to the Illumio Cloud Security Series. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we have an episode from last month about challenges in securing your cloud environment. Today, I'm joined by Illumio's Global Principal Systems Engineer, Brian Pitta, to talk about how you should be migrating to the cloud. It's definitely no surprise that there are many factors that are involved, from way beyond the technical into the organizational structure, processes, culture, skill sets that need to be developed and maintained throughout your team, all kinds of organizational changes that come with migrating to the cloud. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the topic, help you navigate your scenario, and follow along with the blog if you want some referenceable material as well. All right, I'm going to kick it off with the very first bleeding question that I have. It's really around expectations, goals that we should have when we're migrating to the cloud. I know that we can probably aim for the stars right out of the gate, but what has been your customers' experience? Does it really work that way? Can we migrate all of our applications at once, or is it more of a step-by-step approach per application?
It's funny, I've seen that trend change over the past few years, where it's gotten a lot more realistic with what customers are saying. A couple of years ago, we'd be talking to people with their cloud strategy, and it was, we're going to be 100% in the cloud by X date. And that X date was usually a year, 2 years away, maybe 3. Now, when we talk to customers, it seems to be a lot more realistic in the sense of, we're going to have some stuff on-prem for a while. A lot more are going to the net new in the cloud, which I think makes a lot of sense. That's where they're starting out of the, as we're building stuff, let's get away from the tech debt in the data center. Let's build that with cloud native in mind, and then lift and shift where appropriate. But that idea of we're just unplugging everything and moving to the cloud, some folks are still going after it, but we've definitely seen that trend down.
It's kind of like greenfield, where you know everything is compatible, versus like retrofitting legacy applications into a modern build and architecture, and it's just like not fitting. So what were the major challenges that helped your customers in particular come to that revelation and kind of set more realistic expectations?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors there. I think one is the idea of let's just move everything is a lot more expensive than folks realize, because when you're running just infrastructure in the cloud, there can be cost savings, but it can actually end up being more expensive than running it on-prem. I think some folks have seen that. I think the idea of refactoring is easy to talk about and really hard to do, especially when you have more legacy systems. Like there's some stuff that just doesn't fit well to rewriting to run on cloud native services. And the other one, which we see all the time, even not related to cloud, is stuff in the data center is way more connected than people realize. So the idea of breaking apart what you're going to move to the cloud, how you're going to move it, it starts spiraling, where you start saying, okay, if I move this, I have to do that. Oh, that's connected to this. And that just adds a lot more complexity to it that people start to unwind as they start looking at it.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you point out the legacy lifting and shifting is much more complicated than we realize, because you think some low-hanging fruit, and maybe the cheapest way that I've seen people talk about in the recent past is, oh, we'll just move this application there. We don't have to adopt these new service models, which means we don't have to have the technical skills that are required with cloud native architecture. There's a lot of question marks around how to uproot your security and visibility controls into an environment that doesn't match with those tools. It's not compatible with those tools. So lifting and shifting almost seems easier to do, but it also comes with like a flood of other consequences that are hard to tackle, especially when security controls are so, I would say, undefinable. It's like, who owns what? Do we shift left? Why should we shift left? Like if you're moving a legacy application into the cloud, and you want to align yourself to a CI/CD pipeline, does that even match? Can you even do that? Right?
Yeah, the development style doesn't match the deployment style. So they until they figure that out, there's gonna be some friction there.
You said it a lot better than I just said it. Thanks. Okay, so there's lift and shift. We've covered that. There's lift and optimize. There's refactor. There's builds new or cloud native right out of the gate. How do you even navigate all of those? Are your customers approaching these methods per application, or are they kind of choosing a migration method and then adhering to it for all of their applications? Is that even practical?
That goes back a little bit to the trend I'd mentioned before. I think folks started with broad mandates of we're going to go to the cloud and we're going cloud native and trying to force everybody into it. A lot more over the past year or so been hearing when we ask about cloud strategy, it's a lot more app specific. There's encouraging to go to the cloud. Again, there's might be mandates on net new is built in the cloud, but how apps migrate to the cloud has been a lot more left up to the app teams. And it makes sense. Like in Azure, it can be fairly simple to sub out a standard SQL server for just their SQL PaaS offering. That's not a huge change to make, but rewriting application code that runs on traditionally on a VM into using some more native service is going to be a harder lift for the team. So I think they're empowering the app teams to make more of these decisions, which adds complexity too on the flip side of that. And then how do you secure it? So I think when you think of it in the broad mandate, you can come up with some good security plans, but that wasn't realistic and actually in operationalizing that, which then makes the security aspect a little bit more challenging.
Do you think that all of the factors across security controls, application lifecycle, and development, the development and deployment of that application, the way that they're migrating it to the cloud, culture, roles and responsibilities, processes, like the people, processes, technology, right? Mm-hmm. Are all of those typically being factored in with your customers when you help and navigate this migration journey with them? Or do you find that when they first start, it's more of a reluctant technology focus with culture and processes people kind of left behind, and that stagnates the process?
I think it is a lot of the latter. And I think that also the idea of the lift and shift isn't just the technology and the compute. Like when people think about lift and shift, they think if I'm taking a VM in my data center and I'm going to now run that on an EC2 instance in AWS, there's a lot of lift and shift with process too. If you're an organization that has process around how do you request firewalls in your Palo or your checkpoint, and how do you approve new network connectivity, you can lift and shift that process by putting virtualized firewalls into your cloud environment. A lot of customers are doing that, but they, similar to just the lift and shift, that's bringing tech debt with you. That's not fully taking advantage of the cloud. That's bringing kind of the older way of doing it into the cloud, but it might be their quickest path in there and a requirement. So a lot comes with that lift and shift of the process as well, but they, at least most of them in the back of their mind, are seeing how can they migrate away from that as well. Either heavily automate that, which is one avenue, or look to replace it with more cloud native where they can.
Talk to me about the business drivers that are causing your customers to really go through the pain, because it is painful. Change is painful. Nobody likes it. Yes. But we've been really thrusted into an accelerated migration, I think, since 2020. And it's cool to see, because we wanted to get here. Yep. And we had the, unfortunate chain of events that pushed us into this direction more quickly than we anticipated, especially within certain industries like that are highly regulated, especially. But what are those drivers? What are the compelling forces that are moving in this direction, causing them to move in this direction? I
think the main one is around speed and removing friction from getting ideas out to market. That it has become painful at a lot of organizations to get any infrastructure, where you want to do anything and you just need a few VMs. There's forms and processes and all the stuff you got to do. Then it takes 3 weeks. Then they have to configure it. Then you get it. That just holds everything back. And I think everybody just sees they can go a lot faster when they take that out. When they're in the cloud, when they're deploying to cloud native, when they have more federated control over infrastructure, how they want to deploy things, people can move a lot faster. I think that's the number one driver to get folks to do that, is that there could arguably be cost savings in a lot of areas, and that's going to drive businesses to push it. But I think from an infrastructure, from an application side, they see it as it's just the way to get them to market faster on everything they're doing, whether it's external or internal apps.
I definitely see that even from a personal consumer, right?
Yeah.
You notice if you're not going to market and innovating as quickly as your competitors are, it's a losing game. It's almost like if your competitors are adopting cloud models, cloud native models, where they can spin up new services in seconds, not even minutes or days, like in seconds, they can scale on demand with that level of agility. And it comes with some learning curves, granted. Yep. But when your competitors are adopting it, it forces, I think, the rest of the industry to kind of follow suit. Otherwise, you're too slow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's more than just deploying it and building it, automating testing at scale, running through those different environments. That is all just a lot easier when you abstract away the traditional infrastructure.
Yeah. It's like moving the application to the cloud or deciding to get a brand new, cloud native application and get rid of the legacy. Either way that you go, or any path in the middle, right? Whether you're optimizing it or refactoring it or whatever, all of those are just like the first step.
Yep.
Then you talk about what our next video is on. So stay tuned. You adopted a new process or a new model, but you have old processes. Now it's all of those that have to be redefined and restructured. It's a whole new paradigm shift. It's kind of exciting and probably really frustrating for some people as well at the same time, but it's the age that we're in. So before we wrap up this fun video, final thoughts, any words of wisdom that you can share with our audience on how they should migrate to the cloud?
Yeah, that is
no pressure.
That's a loaded question. I think from what I have seen, and people are getting better at it, I like the trend. People are being more logical in the cloud. I think staying with that makes sense of just because there's some new fancy way to do something doesn't mean you have to use it yet. If it makes sense to run a VM and that VM needs to be in the cloud, do it. You don't need to refactor. If it makes sense to run something as Lambda, go ahead and do that in AWS, but don't a lot of times people find a technology they want to use and look to back into it. I think people have moved away from that a little bit and get more logical, but I like that trend because it makes it a lot easier for them.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me, Brian, on this difficult conversation, navigating how should you migrate to the cloud. I'm sure many of you have questions on this topic itself. Make sure to read the blog. We have a lot of references in there and a lot of good tools to help you navigate this process. Until next time, we'll see you then. Thank you.